Arirang Prime.
Service members representing each branch will now come forward and strike the bell in memory of our MIAs.
July 2013. People gathered in Washington, D.C. to remember a war frozen in time. "60 years have passed since the 3-year war in Korea ceased, but the memories of the Korean War are still vivid in American consciousness. And every year, the war veterans' courage and sacrifices are honored.
But here, today, we can say with confidence, that war was no tie. Korea was a victory.
The U.S. Army Chorus's Arirang rings under the sky of Washington, D.C.
Arirang, 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 고개로 넘어간다. 나를 버리고 가시는 님은
How did this Korean folk song come to reverberate so far from home in the land of America? Established in 1922, the U.S. Army Chorus is a prestigious choir from Washington, D.C., with a long history and outstanding talent. It was the U.S. Army Chorus who performed Arirang at the commemoration of the 60th anniversary of the Korean War armistice.
Get a really warm ah to begin and make sure it's a nice blended sound so that all the sections sound equal. Even though he's going to be taking time, let's move with our quarter notes, etc., as though he's going to be right in time. Climbing Arirang Pass through the mountains is not just a place in Korea, but it's a whole idea.
A song of warmth and passion, Arirang is more than just a Korean folk song to them.
It's a powerful song, and it means so much, obviously to the Korean people, but also to Americans, especially Americans who served in the Korean conflict. There are occasions that come up that honor the Korean War. There are also occasions where one of our military leaders is hosting an event in honor of an important Korean guest. And that's always on the list of things to sing when it's an event such as that.
It was a great honor to sing at that event. As you know, the President of the United States was there. Many important dignitaries from Korea were there, and people from around the world and members of Congress, and so it was a fitting tribute to all who fought in that very important conflict.
With Arirang comes the memory of war. A war that ravaged the Korean peninsula 64 years ago. On the peaceful morning of Sunday, June 25th, 1950, North Korea initiated a surprise attack. The Korean War had begun. 16 countries, including the United States, agreed to dispatch military forces, and other countries supplied medical teams and food. Countless soldiers headed to Korea, and amidst the flames of war, they heard Arirang.
After the Korean conflict, the U.S. soldiers who served, they came back with that song, and that song became written on their hearts, and so it's not only a song that's important to the Korean people, but now became also very important to these American people, and they brought back.
This DVD is a movie made by the U.S. Army in 1968. And it featured the U.S. Army Band and Chorus. It's called The Song of the Soldier.
The American soldier came to know the steep, distant hills of Korea.
The Korean War is an important chapter of American military history. Arirang, likewise, is always included in the recordings of war histories and soldiers. From a mournful Arirang in 1968 to a grand, powerful version in 2014, Arirang has been recreated by the U.S. Army Chorus throughout the years. Vocal performances without any instruments. This is an a cappella Arirang.
And when we have a cappella and we take all instruments away, I think it's easier to see the meaning and what's in the heart, and all the distraction of whatever it would be, a piano or a trombone or whatever. A cappella is very intimate, and I think that works well for this song. It's a sentiment that so many can relate to have one person sing it and have everyone else just sort of be behind them. I think it's a very effective way.
Because someone has lost their lover and they're longing for that person. And there's still an element of love that creates pain. I just try to put myself in the place of that person.
Arirang is a song of embrace. It tells the stories of many, but it is also a special song to each and every person. Carrying people's life stories in its melody, Arirang has crossed over many passes.
We had a gentleman from Korea by the name of Myung-yoon, who was in the Army Chorus and used to sing this all the time. Anytime we sang Arirang, it was Myung doing this. And to hear him sing the song, it was amazing, the amount of emotion that he could convey. Just the I'm going home. It's the I'm returning back to my roots, my loved ones.
For the U.S. Army Chorus, Arirang is remembered with memories of a certain man.
여기도 있고 여기도 있고.
Yoon Myung-hun was a member of the Army Chorus for 24 years. For him, whose roots are in Korea, Arirang was a song that became more dear to him as time went by.
우리 그 동료 중에 한 사람이 내가 20몇 년 동안 쓴 악보를 액자에다가 이렇게 넣어서 주었어요. 이게 아리랑 악보거든요. 이게 내 번호가 26번이었고 아리랑 악보를 이렇게 만들어 주었어요. 이 친구가 내 룸메이트 많이 한 친구인데 이 친구가 이렇게 만들어서 나한테 주었어요. 그래서 내가 가지고 있어요. 뭐 우리 대통령들
In America, Arirang meant Korea, so we sang it to the president and honored guests at ceremonies, from small musical soirees to important diplomatic events. Everyone liked his Arirang, but it also engraved a lingering sadness in their hearts.
하모니가 굉장히 그 잔잔하고 그 슬프니까 그래서 아마 아리랑 암코러스가 하는 아리랑을 들어보셨는지 모르지만 좀 그렇게 슬퍼요. 그래서 근데 아리랑은 뭐 슬픈 것만은 아니다. 또 우리가 아리랑을 변조해서 잘 부르면은 아주 활기차게도 할 수 있다. 그런 얘기를 많이 했었죠.
Yoon Myung-hun was the only Korean in the U.S. Army chorus. He has been living in America for years, but just like how he's never forgotten about Korea, Arirang is in his roots and home. Arirang is also a reminder of another past.
Mostly 아리랑이 여기서 불려질 때는 Korean War하고 연관을 해요. 한국 전쟁의 어떤 한국 전쟁 하면 떠오르는 게 뭐냐? 아리랑. 이렇게 이제 돼버렸어요. 미국 군대에서. 그렇기 때문에 전쟁이라는 거는 슬픔이 비극의 역사 아니에요. 그러니까 그래서 아리랑이 거기에 딱 알맞게 편곡이 됐다고 생각해요.
Long Island, New York. Korean War veterans have gathered at a house to share their experiences of the Korean War and Arirang. Although they are over 80 years old, their wartime memories are still vivid. After the armistice went into effect, regional organizations were established throughout America to remember the war and the victory they seized.
North Korea in our squads at that time.
Being 18 years old, you don't understand the value of war. The only thing you see is what's in the movie house. So when I went through basic training, and I always asked multiple times, why are we going to Korea? I never heard of it, technically, which I never did, really.
Although they were teenagers who didn't even know what the war meant, they headed to Korea when war broke out in a foreign land. It wasn't an easy war. Every day brought another struggle, and every day they walked the line between life and death. And for these soldiers fighting in a foreign country, Arirang was what first approached them with camaraderie.
During the initial battles, we knew Arirang. It was a catchy tune. And we had Koreans assigned to us. We had a platoon of Korean Marines, and they sang it. So we picked it up, and we were singing it also. It was just a catchy tune. I used to be able to sing it from start to finish.
That was, the Korean boys used to sing it, and we got bits and pieces of it. You know, we never knew the correct wording of it.
North Korea was unstoppable. Within 3 days of crossing the 38th parallel, they seized Seoul and reached the defense line of the Nakdongang River. However, the tables turned when Operation Chromite, the amphibious landing in Incheon, succeeded on the morning of September 15th, It was a historical moment and a decisive victory.
Very brilliant stroke on his part, because what he did was get behind the Koreans, behind the North Koreans, and cut them off. And that permitted the Pusan perimeter to collapse. And a lot of Korean War veterans, North Korean veterans were captured in POW camps.
And we were all the way up close to the Yalu River between North Korea and China, and it's day and night.
The South Korean flag waved in Seoul again. The Allies kept pushing up north, and many North Koreans and Chinese were captured as prisoners of war. Arirang was used to capture these prisoners. The song became a musical weapon of war.
6.25 전쟁 때 심리전의 일환으로 동부전선 같은 데서 또 서부전선 같은 데서 바이올린 연주하고 또 확성기로 대적 방송이라 그러죠. 그러니까 적군 부대, 적군 진지 바로 앞에 가서 높은 산에서 저쪽 산을 향해서 방송을 때린다든지 해서 그때 했던 이제 심리전을 가지고 아리랑이라고 얘기를 합니다.
Artist Im Soo is a senior cartoonist who was a member of the pacification unit during the Korean War.
옛날이나 지금이나 변함이 없구만. 그때 6.25 때 본 거와 똑같으네. 달라진 게 없어.
The unit used psychological warfare. With the enemies on the other side of the river, they put up posters persuading them to surrender. It is said that over 2.5 billion posters were distributed by the UN command during the war. Another weapon Im used was Arirang.
대적 방송을 하래 날 보고 하모니카를 불면서 고향 생각이 그리워서 기순할 수도 있다는 거야. 그 처량한 노래를 하모니카로 불래. 그 내가 아리랑을 불렀다고.
The sad melody of Arirang booming from the giant speakers every night was successful in swaying the minds of young soldiers. In fact, there is a record that states that about 40 enemies surrendered one day after hearing Arirang.
불쌍한 생각 들더라고요. 그래서 내가 안아줬어요. 자기도 울고 나도 울고. 아, 전쟁 자체가 슬프죠. 그리고 또 왜 슬프냐면 같이 동족끼리 총대를 쏴 죽이려고 이러는 전쟁이 어디 있습니까? 그것도 딴 나라하고 하면 그 적군이라고 그러는데 이건 같은 민족끼리 총질을 하는 거야. 이런 비극이 어디 있냐고. 이거부터가 비극이에요. 민족의 비극이에요.
It was a tragedy for Arirang, a common folk song that appeased people's pain and grief to turn into a war weapon. But it was yet another Arirang pass that the song had to cross.
아리랑이라고 하는 것이 아까도 말씀드렸잖아요. 아름다운 노래다라고 해서. 그리고 감정을 움직일 수 있는 노래이기 때문에 이거는 우리나라 사람이 들으면 어디서든 감동을 해요. 특히 어려운 상황이 있을 때. 그럴 때는 이 노래가 자기의 심중을 울리는 게 되죠. 그러니까 적들 앞에서 아리랑을 부르니까 얘네가 고향 생각도 날 것이고 왜 싸우냐 하는 어떤 이런 것도 될 것이고 이런 상황이 된 거죠.
November 1950, a particularly harsh winter was approaching. The 1st Marine Division encountered the Chinese troops while moving along Changjino Lake, located in the Hamgyeongnam-do province. With that, the bloodiest battle of the Korean War began.
But on the 27th of November, then we began to fight two more enemies. We fought the Chinese, and we fought the weather. And we were not ready for the weather, because we'd been in hot, humid weather in the south, we got aboard ship and very quickly we were back up, and General MacArthur said we'd all be home before Christmas. Well, we weren't home.
Fighting in the mountains at altitudes of over 2,000 meters, along with the cold, started to take a toll on everyone. Relentless Chinese attacks were also a nightmare.
About that time, we began to hear whistles and bells in the valley. Now, if you've ever been in the mountains in the cold, you know how the sound carries. Was the signal on the other side of the mountain. We were on this mountain, it was a long valley, and then another mountain, and it was a signal for them to attack.
The Chinese forces kept creeping closer, accompanied by the sounds of trumpets and cymbals. The U.S. Army succeeded in breaking through 7 Chinese divisions and evacuating to Hungnam. But there's another reason why the Battle of the Choshin Reservoir is remembered. Even in the moments of life and death, the comrades were bound together by Arirang. They sang it together to remember all those who were no longer with them.
When I was walking down the road, if a man got wounded, the trucks were already full. The few trucks that we had, the Jeeps, they were full of evacuees. But in many cases, the wounded who were on the trucks froze to death because they couldn't move. They couldn't walk. You had to walk. You had to keep moving in order to keep your body warm enough so that you could get out.
죽으면 또 얼어. 얼어서 꼬들꼬들하게 돼 있어. 그걸 추덕에다 다 실어가지고 전우니까 가지고 내려온 거야. 가지고 내려온 것이 아니라 모시고 내려온 거야. 전우의 시체를 다.
We had a very low morale sometimes. And every time you go by a beer hall or you go by someplace, they'd be playing this song, Arirang. And so if we were walking down the side of the road to kind of get the spirits going a little bit and get everybody kind of, we would all start singing Arirang, Arirang, Arirang. I think it's cool, but we knew more then than I remember.
During the war, Arirang was also a song of consolation. Sometimes the strains of war were relieved by groups of entertainers. Famous comedians such as Bob Hope and other musicians braved the battlefields of Korea to perform for the troops. Arirang was a song that was never left out of those performances. These performances led to another chapter of Arirang history in America.
그때 당시에 이제 오스카 베티포드라든지 또 피트 시거라든지 또 많은 외국인들 가수들 또 연주자들이 우리나라에 왔었죠. 그 중에 오스카 베티포드 같은 분은 한국에 왔다가 아리랑을 듣고 그것도 아주 우연한 기회에 아리랑을 듣고 미국에 가서 음반을 냈는데 그때 음반이 한국에서 자기가 제목을 물어봤던 아리랑을 잘못 들어서 아디동으로 들었던 거죠.
From folk music to jazz and blues, Arirang in America could be sung in any genre and with any instrument. These changes were embraced with such ease that Americans fell in love with Arirang.
On the radio station that was played to the American troops by the Army, they broadcasted some kind of a program on radio, and when I would, we had a radio in our tent, and we could turn it on, and we could hear that occasionally.
In Korea as well?
Yes, yes. It was just instrumental music. It wasn't anyone singing. I liked the lively tune. I just liked the sound of it.
But behind the success of Arirang in America existed Arirang of pain and sadness.
When I landed in Korea, it's called the Jamestown line. What happened is, the 1st Marine Division was on the East Coast, you know, the Punch Bowl. Okay, and this arrow is where I got wounded. It's called Siberia, that hill.
Where did you get wounded?
When I got hit, I got a leg wound, neck wound, head wound, and my hand. And over here, right here. This is the area here that I got wounded. This is the ship called the USS Constellation. I spent about 3.5 weeks here on this ship, and I lived for 2 weeks in a bucket of ice because it was swollen so bad that's how they cured it.
War is quick to leave scars that last a lifetime. Even after all these years, the war veterans still carry scars in their hearts.
Perchance one hit almost directly above him, and he was cut to pieces. And I still remember his name, Kim Bay.
We go on, we came to this little village, and there were multiple civilians massacred, and little children. The little boy's hand was blown off. So right away I took my medicine pouch and I wrapped it, and I called the corpsman. The corpsman is a medic person. And I took his hand and I put it in my pocket. I don't know why, but I did that. But I brought the little boy in there. They took him from my arms. So I went back to the Jeep. Then I remembered I had his hand in my pocket. The hand was this big. So I went back to give the hand, and the little boy died. He perished. Well, that made me understand what war was.
The Korean War resulted in 200,000 widows and over 100,000 orphans. Orphanages were established all over South Korea, and relief supplies were sent from across the world.
In 1951, after we had evacuated Gyeongnam and went down to Busan and started to move north again, we saved all our chocolates to give to the Korean children, and they were very grateful for that. And we'd eat the chocolates, and then they would sing for us different little folk songs. And the one I particularly liked was Arirang. It had a kind of a sad tone to it, but it was very pretty. So.
The war left the land in ruins and was responsible for 1.6 million casualties in the South alone. Streets were filled with orphans and their echoes of Arirang.
But it's quite special because it was made in 1954, very soon after the Korean War. The children had formed a choir of, I think, about 22 or 25 children, and they were evacuated from Seoul down to Busan during the war. And shortly after the war, the American military had hoped to be able to earn some money.
stop the shooting. That means much to the fighting men and their families. And it will allow some of the grievous wounds of Korea to heal. Therefore, I am thankful. The task now is to put the ceasefire agreement into full effect and get down to working out an enduring settlement of the Korean problem.
June 27th, 1953, the war finally comes to a halt. The U.S. troops returned to their homeland and reunited with their families. For the past 60 years, Arirang was sung every year to commemorate all those who served, died, or went missing. July 27th, 2014. A ceremony to remember the Korean Armistice Day took place in Washington, D.C.
Have your attention, please. The ceremony that you are about to witness is an Army reclaim ceremony to be conducted in memory of the Korean War.
Although armistice denotes half a peace, it was an achievement earned by the courage and sacrifices of countless veterans.
Every year, we like to remember the armistice. The Armistice Day was 61 years ago today. For all Korean veterans, this is a very special day. Not only did we stop fighting, we were able to come home, but we knew.
It's National Korean War Veterans Armistice Day.
Welcome today. I'm glad you...
The war isn't over. However, the Korean War veterans in the U.S. and other countries of the UN Command observe Armistice Day to remember their involvement. And Arirang is there through all the ceremonies. It's a song that reaches beyond national borders and race. Some say that the Korean War is a forgotten war, and some say that it's a forgotten victory. But to these veterans, the Korean War was a resounding victory.
We wanted the public to know that the Korean War was not a forgotten war or a forgotten victory. Remember, we won the war. People say we didn't. We won because Korea will not be free.
In March 1956, President Lee Seung-man and his First Lady gave Commander Caraway of the 7th Infantry Division a pennant embroidered with Arirang music and lyrics. This marked the beginning of the bond between Arirang and the 7th Infantry Division.
미 7사단이 아리랑을 공식 사단 행진곡으로 선택한 기록이야. 1956년 5월 26일자로 사단 명령 63호로 이것이 공식 채택된 거예요.
There is another person who has stories to tell. Thomas J. Hall has a special connection to the Korean War. His father was one of the first Americans to fight in the Korean War.
He was in the 24th U.S. Infantry Division, and they were the first ones to go in to Korea. My mother said that I think one of these men, I think this man might have been killed and this man was shot and badly wounded. My father was lucky. He was not wounded but did break his leg.
He also developed his own relationship with Korea when he served in the 7th Infantry Division in Korea from July 1962 to April 1963.
I'm glad they sent me to Korea. I was glad because my father had been there, and anybody who served in Korea and meets the Korean people, no, they're very good people.
The 7th Infantry Division is one of the most well-known divisions. During the Korean War, They became famous for their critical role in the Battle of the Choshin Reservoir and also as the Bayonet Division.
During the Korean War, the 7th Infantry Division was known as the Bayonet Division, and the reason for that is in the very heavy fighting up in the north near the Chosin Reservoir, the weather got so cold that the weapons would freeze and you could not operate them to fire, and so the officers told the men to fix their bayonets, and that's how they fought the Chinese, with their bayonets.
Thomas was introduced to Arirang in the 7th Infantry Division. Their marching song was their division song Bayonet, sung to the melody of Arirang.
Oh yes, I'm the young man right here in front holding the unit guidon, and then this animal here is the goat. It was the company mascot. We would have parades perhaps once, well, we had them maybe once every quarter. I did not know at the time that it was the 7th Infantry Division official anthem, but now I do know. So that I do remember that was a song that, or a marching song that was always played. This is a parade that is going to take place. Generally the band would be here. The gentlemen who would play Arirang, they would be right here, and then the units, we would form up here, and then we would turn, we'd march down here, and then we'd pass the reviewing stand and then go back into formation. The marching song, I could hum a few bars with na 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 na. Well, we marched to that, and it was a marching. The version of Arirang that we marched to was a marching song, and so it would play as we marched by each unit. But it was oftentimes the first marching song that was played. It's a very pretty song. Oh, here we go. Yes, right. yes, of course. Oh, I see. Because they have the 2nd Infantry Division there as well.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I see. Okay. Hold your bayonets high, for freedom's light will never die. Shout for victory, and sing a song that men are free. I am the bayonet. Place your trust in me. Hold your bayonets high, so that freedom's light will never die.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's change of command ceremony. We would also like to extend
After completing their duties in Korea, the 7th Infantry Division returned home to America for good in 1971. But their bond with Arirang continues to today. Although singing Hold Your Bayonets High to the sorrowful tune of Arirang may seem paradoxical, the 7th Infantry Division's Arirang is a song of friendship that bonded the troops together through times of war. This past June, about 80 war veterans and their families gathered at a hotel in Seoul. They were participants of the 2014 Revisit Korea program, commemorating the 64th anniversary of the start to the Korean War. On this day, the youth peace camp accompanied the war veterans.
These are company area. This is troops marching here. This is my work, where I work.
Looking out the window of the bus, the war veterans could recall their memories of war and witness the development of Korea at the same time. The bus arrives in Panmunjom, where the reality of a divided country can be understood through the silence of the North and the South Korean soldiers facing each other.
But they also mark the MDL. So those of you on my left are actually in North Korea right now. Those of you on my right are in South Korea, and you ain't figured out what you're going to do yet. So, neutral. Yeah, you're neutral, right? Okay. Outside, if you notice the soldiers outside, something interesting about this room.
The only divided country in the world, Panmunjom brings back a surge of memories from more than 60 years ago. At a souvenir store, the visitors met a friend that they had forgotten about.
There's the line right there.
When we were happy.
When you were happy.
We didn't know what the song meant. Just was a nice song. I found out later it's a love song.
Korean #1 song, and I'd hear it quite often, you know, through things. Oh, I just learned to like the song.
The War Memorial of Korea in Yongsan is dedicated to educating the public about the horrors of war and spreading anti-war messages. There is a unique exhibition there that captured people's attention. It was the Arirang scarf.
전쟁 당시에 세계 각국으로 이 스카프가 이렇게 많이 보내진 거로 이렇게 파악이 됩니다. 스카프를 한번 살펴보시면은 가운데 한반도를 중심으로 사방으로 21개국 참전국이 표시가 돼 있고 또 안쪽에 있는 부대 마크들은 6.25 전쟁 당시 참전했던 미군 부대들의 마크들입니다.
The translated English lyrics of the song are written on the scarf.
가사가 조금 약간 문법도 안 맞고 이렇게 해학적인데 약간 슬픈 그런 감정도 배어 있습니다. 그래서 당시에 미국군이나 뭐 유엔군 참전 병사들에게도 이 아리랑은 상당히 큰 의미를 가지고 각자의 병사들 마음속에 깊이 새겨진 것 같습니다.
Names cover the memorial walls. Some look for hometown friends. Some look for their brothers.
But they were killed in the Korean War.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be. That's the only one there. Yeah, that's got to be him. He was my company commander. Had a brother who was lost about a week after the war started in Korea. He was missing in action for many, many years, and they finally declared him dead, and his name was on the wall in there. So I got to lay a flower at the base of his name.
The war that went on for 3 years and a month resulted in countless deaths, injuries, and disappearances. Arirang soothed the agonies and the scars of those left behind.
Well, the Korean War in our family is a memory of a very sad memory of the loss of life of my brother, the disruption of the family for years. But the thing about it is we thought it was a good war in that it stopped the advance of the communists.
I had forgotten. There was a period that when I came back, I guess I was pretty depressed, and there was a lot of things I didn't want to remember. I didn't. In later years, as we would sit around and talk, certain things would come back, and I had plumb forgotten about Arirang.
Arirang is the same thing for the Korea War generation. Soldiery heard it, and it was a tune that reverberated with them, because it is a beautiful piece of music. But more importantly, the lyrics tell a story that makes it easier to understand the Korean people, okay? So Arirang became sort of like the GI's song.
Arirang, Arirang, Arirang.
Arirang,
Ario, Arirang Geru Namaganda, Nadal Padigyo Kashiranima.
He tells a story that one time a song stopped a war. It was back in the 30 Years' War, and the British were fighting the French, and the British landed in France, and they marched towards the French enemy in Normandy, a region in the north of France. As they came closer, both sides were singing their song to go into battle. And it was the same song. When they heard the song, they decided they were not going to fight. So maybe there's hope with Arirang for another generation to do the same.
Arirang is a song that represents a generation. A war song that soothed the pains of broken lives 60 years ago now sings of the end of all wars and the age of peace. That new song is the Arirang of Hope.